2 weeks after being announced as the new manager, Ruben Amorim finally took charge of his first training session at Manchester United. Now, normally I wouldn't really be too interested in this and I wouldn't bother breaking down what we saw. However, in this particular session, there were a few interesting principles and sort of patterns of play that I want to look at today. So if you guys quickly subscribe to the channel real quick, we're really close to 40k, so if you could help it'd be amazing. Then we'll have a look at what we saw. So the first sort of interesting thing in terms of this training session was the way that the players were set up. It looked kind of something like this from the footage that we saw. And I think this is interesting in the way that it plays out on the pitch, and there's a couple of things that stand out to me straight away. Of course, first of all, we've got the 3-4-3 formation. I think we've all assumed and been pretty confident this is the shape that we would see, and that training session very much suggests that it will be the case. What I found really interesting though was the number of left footers in the team. See, how many times have we analysed a match this season and gone, Manchester United lack balance, there's a lack of left footers in the team. In this training drill there was actually several. You've got Ahmad, Anthony, Malacia, Luke Shaw and Johnny Evans, a player that I would class as being two-footed. Transfer market website agrees with me as well, by the way. It's interesting to see so many left-footed players playing in the team, because this was something that we know that Erik ten Hag really wanted, and a lot of the time he wasn't able to get that. So it'll be interesting to see how much of a focus Amorim puts in this area. How important is it to have that balance of left-footers and right-footers? I'm not sure, but certainly in this particular session, there were quite a lot of them. The next thing you will notice is these lines that I have connecting the defenders. And the reason I want to connect these is because it creates this sort of horseshoe shape. Now, what is the benefit of this shape? It allows you to cycle and recycle the ball quite nicely, quite effectively. It allows you to retain the ball. And these lines will, at times, almost represent passing sequences from Manchester United, where, for example, you might work the ball down the left-hand side, you get closed down, you can't really progress the ball forward. So what you do is you turn around, you come back, you play safe, you go around, you cycle to the other side, and now you have a go down here. You can't move the ball forward this side. Okay, you cycle it back again. This was something that we saw in these training clips. This sort of horseshoe across the back. You've got Lenny Yoro on the ball, and he doesn't really see the way to progress, so he plays to the left-hand side. And now we are going to see that sort of playing across effect. The ball goes to Johnny Evans in the middle. He plays it across to Luke Shaw. Luke Shaw plays it simple, again up the line to Tyrell Malacia. Tyrell Malacia eventually pops the ball inside. The ball goes back to Luke Shaw, and the process begins again. United begin to then recycle possession around the other side. This is something that I think we will see quite a lot of early on under Ruben Amorim, because this is almost a method that you use when you're struggling to progress the ball. And ultimately, with the new manager coming in, it will take a bit of time to work on ball progression. So I think early on we might see a lot of these moves from United, where the back three is fairly obvious, and the ball sort of gets cycled around between the back three. And I think this is something that United need to do. Under Erik ten Hag, what we saw a lot of was really quick, fast, direct play, looking to get the ball forward as quickly as possible. This is something United need to get better at, and I think Amorim will try to do it, because the shape sort of naturally allows it. Now, if we continue on this theme of sort of ball retention, ball cycling, we move on to the double pivot, Casemiro and Kobbie Mainoo. Now, to be honest, we didn't see too much in the clips around these two. We saw some good footwork from the two of them, some good passing, which we'll come on to in a second. Something we did see which was interesting was the talk that Ruben Amorim and Kobbie Mainoo had. And the action that Amorim was kind of suggesting in this clip was the fact that he wanted Kobbie Mainoo to do more movement away from the ball before then arriving towards the ball, to give himself a little bit more space. So what that looks like is essentially, let's say Luke Shaw's got the ball here, for example, and Kobbie Mainoo's being marked by a midfielder. Amorim was suggesting that Kobbie should do this a bit more. Move forward, kind of stutter this way to drag the defender, and then arrive back into the space that you've just created for yourself. Now, the reason Amorim would want Kobbie to be doing this is because it means that Kobbie can receive the ball and get time on the ball, meaning that, you know, he can therefore be more influential. But also, he's going to get more time, more space to make things happen. I think that is something that Amorim will put a focus on. And I think it's something which Kobbie can get better at. Generally speaking, I think his ability to move into space is pretty good. But there are moments where he sort of stands still, when actually he could make more room for himself with this sort of movement. So it's interesting to see that little pattern, kind of dragging players away and then arriving into the space that you've just created for yourself. And that could create the ability to get the ball in midfield, and then from there you can play quick pop passes. And that kind of brings us on to the next point. A pattern that we saw in this session was the up, back and through method. Now, what is that method? We spoke about it quite a lot, to be honest, under Erik ten Hag. It is the up pass going forward through the lines. It is then a backwards pass, setting yourself into midfield. This player then getting time and then playing forward. That could be to the far side. It might be down the same line. It's a really effective method of ball progression though. You see, what happens when you play up like this is these players come out towards you and they feel that they can engage, Mason Mount has received the ball, so you want to put him under pressure. What happens next is the back pass goes. Now, because these players have already stepped up, they want to continue that momentum in the same direction. They want to continue moving forward towards the ball, so the opposition start to squeeze. And of course, when the opposition squeeze in that way, big gaps are suddenly left in behind. Again, Mason Mount might spin in here, it might be Ahmad on the far side, Tyrell Malacia. This up, back and through method can be really effective, and particularly with what is essentially a front five fairly early in the move, this could be a great way for United to move the ball forward. And there's a kind of a nice glimpse of this here. We've got Kobbie Mainoo on the ball, left side of midfield, and he plays the ball up initially into Ahmad in the right inside forward position. Ahmad plays the ball backwards, first time to Casemiro, and then we see that up pass. Now, of course, we've got to remember this is a very passive training session, right? They are literally playing against dummies, not even actual footballers. But you can see the pattern of movement that Manchester United are trying to work on. You can imagine this movement replicated around opposition defenders. And of course, the benefit is it allows you to get into positions like this where you can then be effective in the final third. And that's our wing back on the ball, Anthony, on the right hand side, playing wing back, and look at the numbers in the box. Plenty of players in the middle to aim for. So again, I think this is an interesting pattern. Now, I mentioned there that when the ball went wide, United had lots of options in the middle, and the reason for that was because Manchester United were playing with essentially, or training I should say, with a front three. And this was, again, something which was very apparent in this training clip. The proximity of these players, how close they are to each other. You see, when the wing-backs are providing width for you, getting forward in these wide positions, kind of stretching the opposition, it creates space in the middle. And when you've got two inside forwards, or two number 10s, two wingers, two channel players, whatever you want to call them, but you've also got your centre forward as well, it does give you three players in this position that can sort of interchange, pick up the ball. If you look at the profiles we've got here, Ahmad, Rashford, Mason Mount, all three of them can kind of play all three positions here. So Rashford can drop deeper, Mount can push on, or it might be Ahmad pushing on. They can sort of rotate, and I think this is something that we'll see under Amorim. A positional freedom from the front three, as long as these spaces are still being occupied. And that could be really dangerous for Manchester United. You see, when you get good technical players close to each other, that's when you see magic in football. That's when you see beautiful moments. And in terms of those sorts of moments, these are the players that you want in those positions. You've got Ahmad on the ball here, but you can see how close the other two forwards are. And it allows for the quick combination. Amad Diallo plays the ball initially to Marcus Rashford, like so. Rashford is eventually going to return the ball after a sort of tackle from the defender. And then Ahmad gets his license to go forward. If you compare this to the position that the wingers have been playing so far this season for United, they've rarely been this narrow. We've often seen our wingers incredibly wide, sort of holding the width. Again, this is a principle of Amorim. Getting these inside forwards close to each other, close to the striker, and into shooting positions, goal-scoring positions. So again, that is something that I found interesting. The fact that these forwards are close to each other. You can still see the wing-back, Anthony, providing the width, getting forwards for his team down the outside. It makes United potentially quite dangerous going forward. And then finally, just the other thing that I want to touch on was the clear width in this team, in this kind of, in these training clips. Manchester United stretching the pitch, stretching the training pitch as big as possible to make space. And what we saw often from these positions was some sort of switch or a long pass. That could be from Yoro at right centre-back, it could be from Casemiro in midfield, or Johnny Evans in the middle. But big switches out to the other side towards a wing-back, which causes a full-back to come out towards you. And what that does is create space in this channel. This was a pattern we were seeing quite a lot in just a 7-minute training clip. A lot of these movements. It could happen the other side as well. So Shaw could get the ball, you ping it out to Anthony, and basically as that ball is sort of travelling in the air, that's when the opposition fullback comes across. That's when that channel of space opens up. And that's when you can get into the final third and then suddenly see cutbacks into the middle. This is something that I think will be big under Amorim, and that's why I think Manchester United fans will like him. We want quick, fast attacking football, but we want to stretch the pitch, make it as big as possible. Amorim wants to do exactly that. We spoke about it the other week, the importance of these patterns. Getting the ball out wide to a wing-back, a player making a run off the ball, you can see the run here from Mason Mount, so that when Malacia gets the ball, he's got that first time pass, down the line for the inside forward, and then eventually we see the cutback. Again, we spoke about this 10 days, 2 weeks ago, something like that, looking at Manchester United, or Sporting Lisbon as well, getting into these positions and creating these moments, these patterns, these movements into the final third, where you find the underlapping runner. This was something that was really evident in these training clips, getting the ball into these positions. You got it again here, this time it's Johnny Evans, picks up the ball, switches it wide to the left-hand side, Malacia, first touch in behind for Mason Mount. Mason Mount gets towards the byline and cuts the ball across into the middle for Marcus Rashford. And I think Mason Mount played quite a big role in this training session, playing as an inside forward. That energy, that ability to drive into these spaces looked really good. So again, it's just an interesting pattern. And I think what we saw was Amorim sort of trying to implement the basics. And that's all he can do initially. The first month, 6 weeks, 8 weeks will be fairly basic stuff. We don't necessarily learn too much about Amorim from these clips, but we get a couple of ideas. Those patterns of moving the ball forward pretty quickly, but also the ability to cycle possession around the back. But when we do get the ball forward, let's have lots of players in there. Let's provide the width, but get lots of players in the middle as well. These are sort of the ideas that we're seeing from Amorim, and I think it's what we can expect in the early games, the sort of basics being implemented into this side. In terms of what that actually means for the future and Manchester United on the proper pitch in the Premier League, I would expect to see similar patterns to this on Sunday against Ipswich. So remember some of these patterns. You will probably see them in the match at the weekend. But in terms of actually, for now, we kind of have to wait and see. And for today's video, we are now finished. So thank you guys very much for watching. Hope you have enjoyed it as always. Something a little bit different, breaking down a training session. Let me know if you would like to see this more in the future. But apart from that, we're finished. So thanks for watching. Hope you have enjoyed it. And as always, I'll see you in the next one.